기자부대, hop on the beat!
If you're a fan of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, you might have heard somebody claim that series creator Hirohiko Araki hates dogs. I've been a JoJo fan for nearly 10 years now, and I was hearing this back when I was still new, and it remains as a common topic of discussion to this day. This belief usually stems from the amount of dogs that appear in JoJo which end up perishing, usually in some kind of horrifying way. But does Araki actually hate dogs? Well, I'd like to actually look into this claim. First, I'm going to take a look at how many dogs have actually died in JoJo. Then I want to find out what exactly Araki has said when it comes to his feelings about dogs, and if that is at all reflected by the manga. Hopefully by doing this we can finally learn once and for all if Araki actually hates dogs. I think it goes without saying that this video will contain some spoilers for JoJo. I'll be showing some things from multiple different parts, but I'd say as long as you've seen up to at least part 3, you'll avoid any major spoilers. Let's start with part 1, with JoJo's first and possibly most well-known dog death, the death of Jonathan's dog Danny. This happened as part of Dio's plan to mentally break Jonathan when he sealed Danny inside of the trash incinerator. If you only watch the anime, you might not be familiar with this, but in the manga it's much more graphic since you actually see Danny burst out of the furnace door on fire. Here you also have the extra detail of Dio having tied Danny's mouth closed. Later, when Jonathan travels to Ogre Street to search for the antidote, he sees a puppy being snatched away by a stray cat. In part 2, dogs actually get off easy, with the only 2 dogs appearing being Stroheim's dog in the manga, which nothing happens to, and the dog who is saved by cars, so the manga actually went out of its way to avoid hurting it. Part 3 though is a different story and is probably what most people think of when it comes to Araki not liking dogs. The first death here comes in the Yellow Temperance arc when the dog Pokey is pulled apart by the stand. In the original English release of Part 3, this was actually censored to appear less graphic. Later, a dead dog is seen on the way to the village in the Justice arc. A couple more dogs appear in this arc, although they're actually long-dead corpses manipulated by Enya's stand ability. In the Death 13 arc, Kakyoin witnesses a dog die in his dream and then sees the dead dog in real life due to Death 13's ability. Interestingly, this was also censored in the Old English manga, instead being poorly replaced by a giant rat. Later, the 2 dogs Chibi and Buchi are killed by Pet Shop. Finally is of course the most famous dog in JoJo, Iggy. Iggy died during the fight with Vanilla Ice when he sacrificed himself to save Polnareff. Part 4 doesn't get off to a good start with the pretty brutal death of a dog at the hands of Angelo as retaliation against the dog and owner after stepping in poop. A while later, we also see Arnold, the ghost of a dog killed by Yoshikage Kira. However, you may be surprised to learn that's it. That's actually every dog to ever die in JoJo. Since then, it has not happened. Arnold debuted in the manga in September of 1993, meaning it has actually been over 30 years since a dog last died in the JoJo manga. Dogs didn't just stop appearing either. Part 4 had a ton of them, like Koichi's dog Police and the dog healed by Tonio. Dogs were also featured prominently in the final arcs of Part 5 and 6. Later parts also feature their fair share of dogs, and there's actually a lot of moments where they avoid danger happening around them. Most recently is Iwasuke from Part 8, a rock dog. He does get injured a bit, but he always ends up okay in the end. Even back in Part 3, which has the most dog deaths, there are still many dogs that appear which nothing happens to. The JoJo Wiki helpfully counted all the dogs in JoJo and calculated the percentages they died at. Based on this, only 3 of the 9 parts have featured a dog's death. Part 1 has the worst ratio, with 3 dogs being shown and 2/3 of them dying. Part 3 is the one with the most deaths, although there are many more dogs shown, so the percentage is only in the 40s. And if we look at all the totals across the series, only about 18% of the dogs in JoJo meet an unfortunate end. So where exactly does this idea of Araki hating dogs come from? Well, for one, I think a lot of this arose from fans of the anime, and since most of these deaths are front-loaded into the beginning of JoJo, it makes it seem like it happens all the time if those are the only parts of JoJo that you've seen. However, just because dogs die in the story doesn't mean Araki hates them, as is often claimed. So what exactly does Araki think of dogs? Well, Araki has actually spoken a lot about dogs. In the JoJonium Volume 15 interview, Araki spoke about the creation of Iggy. Here he says that to him, dogs symbolize loyalty and friendship. While he doesn't own a dog, the more he drew Iggy, the more he found himself becoming a dog lover. In response to why he didn't have a cat join instead of a dog, he says that he felt like a cat would just end up betraying them along the way. He says he always ends up putting cats on the enemy's side, like Darby's cat that was used to cheat the protagonists. Now this is an interesting turn of events, since it seems like Araki actually loves dogs and seems to have a dislike for cats. So how are cats treated in the JoJo series? Well, if you look at most of JoJo's cats, they're usually portrayed as evil in some way. There's the cat I already mentioned from part 1 that ate a puppy. Then there's Darby's cat, which tricked the Crusaders, leading to Polnareff's soul being taken. In part 4, you have the main villain's Killer Queen, which is designed like a cat. And also Tama, the stand user cat, which attacked Shinobu before becoming a plant. Cats have also gotten similar treatment to dogs in the series. There was that cat that Dio killed during Time Stop, and the cat that was mistreated by Formaggio in part 5. Finally, if we go all the way to the newest chapters of part 9, the first major fight the characters get into is against a group of evil cats. Those cats also end up dying, not unlike the dogs of early JoJo. So what does Araki have against cats? Well, according to Araki, when he was a kid his grandfather had a cat named Chaco. They normally doted on it, but one day when Araki ignored it, it hurt him. He says he never trusted cats since. This rivalry with cats continued years later. In a 1997 interview with Bubka magazine, the interviewer relays a story from Araki's wife, that the neighborhood cats all seem to hate him. Araki says that the cats repeatedly poop in his garden and so he scared them off with an air rifle. Later he describes memorizing the paths the cats take, and then waiting to jump out and surprise them as they walk by. However, Araki's relationship with cats isn't entirely negative. After all, Stray Cat ended up becoming good in the end. Araki has also made a cat the protagonist of a story before, in his one-shot manga Dolce and His Master. In this story, a cat and his owner are stranded on a boat and he has to avoid being eaten. He also ends up escaping in the end unharmed. So why do so many dogs die in JoJo despite Araki liking them? Well, I think this isn't really limited to dogs. Like I described before, cats also die in JoJo. Actually, it would be more accurate to say that everything dies in JoJo. Throughout the whole series, we've seen some particularly gruesome fates befall totally innocent human characters. And that's not even mentioning all the horrible things that happen to the more prominent characters, both on the protagonist and antagonist side. Despite that though, the dog deaths are still quite prevalent, especially compared to other animals. But I think there's actually a very specific reason for this. In Araki's book, Manga in Theory and Practice, he discusses how he writes characters. He says he considers how a person treats animals to be a very important trait for determining that character's personality. I think the reason so many dogs die in JoJo is precisely because Araki loves them. Since in his eyes, mistreating or killing a dog is one of the most evil things a character can be shown doing. Just look at some of the characters that we see harming dogs. They're always the enemies, like Pet Shop or Vanilla Ice, some of the most ruthless villains in the series. In part 4, the two dogs were killed by Angelo and Kira, two deranged serial killers who are both in the running for some of the most despicable characters Araki has created. And of course, all the way back in part 1, Danny was killed by Dio, a character that Araki considers to be the ultimate embodiment of evil. So these deaths serve a very important purpose, which actually stems from Araki's love of dogs, to get across that the characters who do these things are extremely evil. Hopefully this video helped answer any confusion surrounding Araki's thoughts on dogs, and I hope you managed to learn something new about Araki and JoJo in the process. I enjoyed making a shorter video in this kind of format, so if there's any similar quick question related to the series you would like me to make a video about, please comment it down below. To stay updated on future videos, make sure to subscribe and click the bell. You can also be notified when new videos release by joining the Haman Beat Discord. I'd also appreciate if you help support the channel on Patreon. There you can receive Discord perks as well as the opportunity to submit questions. This video's question comes from Rex. He asks what videos I'm most proud of. Well, I'm very proud of the Debunking Araki Forgot series since it has obviously been my most successful group of videos, and I think it has resulted in people being less susceptible to JoJo-related misinformation. However, if I were to pick just one video I'm the most proud of, it would be my recent analysis of Dio as a character. I think I managed to really get to the core of what makes Dio Dio, and how he perfectly embodies JoJo's main theme that has been around since the beginning. So I hope you go check that video out. Thank you for watching. This is the part of the video where I thank my $5 and up patrons. Thank you to Alex Ramirez, Doorbell, Crayon, Rigo Vids, Zucato, Pumpkin Doge, Marrow, Almighty Quarth, Cowrie, Gatlin Grove, Lime Jinjo, 17-Hit Combo, Sponge Cake, Cakext, Feliciano Rabaja, Rayana Meme, Christian McDonough, Navi, Emmanuel Etienne, Pulse Dog, Great Riek, D, Dr. Zombie, Carmotrina, Hunter Gill, Adam Grogan, Zach Greenfield, FIFO, Faro, and Rob Goliath.